USSR for military and political influence shaped the continent. So did the rivalry between those who sought to monopolize its resources and obtain the largest number of lackeys and clients. The struggle between East and West was indeed fierce. Its coveted prizes were Africa's raw materials, and having African countries as allies in international fora. We were the victims of that struggle. The world drew no benefits from it either. All that happened was the creation of additional battlefield. Traditionally, the conflict used to be in and on Eastern and Western Europe. Then it was extended to Africa. Africa was divided into countries allied with the Eastern Bloc or the Western Bloc, like it sapped the energies of the major powers. That conflict exhausted Africa. Both the US and the USSR squandered enormous resources in order to dominate the largest possible part of Africa. That reflected negatively on world peace, stability, security, and economy. Revolutions, wars, and fighting erupted. Acts of violence, assassinations, and physical liquidation took place, though not to the same degree. Similar things happened in Europe by the way of conflict, Cold War, and occasional hot wars. The conflict was over Europe like it was over Africa, and in particular North Africa, and more specifically the place we are in right now. What I mean is that when a continent like Africa or Europe finds itself the theatre of a hot or cold war between major powers, that situation is bound to have an extremely negative consequences, both regionally and globally. It's therefore my ardent wish that the world, through this meeting, will draw the necessary lessons from the past experience. I also hope that it will desist from such practices. Europe used to be divided. There used to be military confrontation between its eastern and western parts. Now it could be said that Europe has been united. Its unity is a factor that contributes to great political, economic, and psychological stability. Now Europe acts as a buffer zone between the Russian Federation and the US. It must remain peaceful, united, and a zone of separation rather than confrontation. Now I return to Africa, our main subject. Africa has been rid of the conflict that plagued it during the Cold War. Most regrettably, the signs of a new struggle over Africa have become clearly visible. It might take us back to the tragedies of the past. What is happening now is the emergence of a conflict between China and the US over Africa. It's my duty to be the first to sound the alarm against this menace. The subject is being broached very timidly and hesitantly. It is like someone who's suffering from a disease but decides to ignore it until it's too late. I do not wish to hide the truth from the peoples of Africa or of the whole world. A new conflict is emerging in Africa. It will take Africa back to being an arena of competition between the major powers. The conflict is likely to drain the energy of its main protagonists, the US and China. Let me describe the approach taken by each of the two countries. America is taking a harsh, rough approach to Africa. It is coming in with soldiers, weapons, and military bases. It's seeking military bases and an American military command in Africa. It grossly interferes in the internal affairs of Africa. Human rights, which are not given any attention inside the US itself, are used as a pretext to penetrate Africa and exert pressure on it. It trumpets human rights and democracy, despite the fact that democracy does not exist in America or elsewhere. It talks of good governance, while in reality there's no such thing. It interferes in every aspect of internal affairs. if lackey of